Hello, everyone. And tonight, our special guest is Mr. Justin Cowell.
Evening. How we doing?
I'm all right, mate.
Good stuff. Good to hear it.
So, for all our listeners out there, whether we got any yet or not, no one's shown up in the chat yet, but I'm sure some will watch this afterwards. Can you tell us, the audience, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, blimey, it's obviously been linked with the paranormal for quite a while now, for quite a good few years. But I suppose for me, it all started off from childhood. The one of the things I suppose I've had on in terms of my Twitter for forever has been the fact that I had this experience in my childhood family home with a poltergeist, and that sowed the seed basically from the age of 7 years old. And we'll go into it a bit later on, perhaps. But so from 7, I was just kind of knew about some strange things that was going on in my home, and as I grew up, became a teenager. Then I joined things like the SPR, and I was reading about the Enfield poltergeist and things like that. And obviously life gets in the way. You know, end up getting married, getting divorced, having kids, all of that, and eventually I kind of ended up going out and investigating on my own initially, just because I had this fascination, this kind of itch that I just needed to scratch, basically. And I wanted to find out, for myself, the truth of things, what on earth is going on. And so I started going out, on my own, and then ended up with a chap called Dale, and we formed this group called Paranormal Truth. Well, I joined his group, really, called Paranormal Truth, and we was going around the country. We did a documentary, plenty of things like that. We had a podcast every Monday called Super Neutral. And for a good few years, we were kind of known for that, essentially, just going around debunking things and having a go at people who we thought was faking, and genuinely just trying to understand what the bloody hell is going on, and try and experience something for ourselves that we regarded as genuine. But we were so skeptical. As we were going around, we never thought it'd happen. Never, ever did we think it'd happen, because we were going to all over the country, from, just all over to these supposedly haunted locations. And we didn't get anything. So it was like, well, what is going on? What are people experiencing? Because we just we go there, we film an episode, we try and find out what people are experiencing. And we'd always leave disappointed, to be honest. And so for a long time, we became a little bit disillusioned, to be honest, about the paranormal. We were just like, well, is it all fake? Is it all just TV demons and absolute rubbish? Because we weren't getting anything. Odd noises, little taps and things, but nothing of any anything that was really, really important that we would always kind of disregard, essentially. Something that was you could easily disregard as natural. But then we did experience something, which we'll probably talk about. We did experience something, and it just changed my whole view on the paranormal. Absolutely. Within minutes, we knew it was real. We knew it was, and it wasn't some kind of app that we were using, because we didn't use apps. It wasn't anything that was kind of subtle. It was, direct. It was in front of us, or above us, actually, and it was undeniable. And after that, we just had to completely do an about turn and change our opinion of things, because we knew, hand on heart, having been skeptical and debunking it for years on end, that there is something going on. We just didn't know what, and we still don't know. And I don't think anybody will ever.
We're all still doing it. We're all still researching, looking for things we can't explain, and trying to give a reasonable answer. Really, sometimes you just can't find one. But we've got a few people in. Good evening to everybody. Lisa,
evening, guys.
So what's the topic today? Well, the topic is
Justin Cowell.
Yeah,
what I want to know is your experiences with this poltergeist. That's fascinating me.
Yeah, I mean, we in some regards, obviously we in my family, we had a poltergeist, and very typical of poltergeist cases, it did not last long. So it was about 6 weeks. We're talking from November 1984 to December. So it was literally a period of 6 weeks until it stopped just before Christmas. And like I said, I was 7, and I've got 2 brothers, and they were younger than me. And to be honest, my parents tried to keep a lot of it from me because they didn't want to scare me or my brothers. You know, they were kind of too young to really understand anyway, and I was just old enough to understand what was going on. And I can still remember certain things. I can remember certain kind of comments my dad was making at the time, and he was like a builder, and he was kind of no nonsense. He didn't believe any of it, but he found it all a bit unusual and funny, to be honest. He just found it entertaining, whereas my mum was absolutely terrified. So essentially what happened in November of 1984, we moved into a new property, and this property was formerly a shop. I've come from Northamptonshire, which is famous for the boot and shoe trade, and we lived opposite an old factory, an old boot and shoe factory, and so the shop was really to cater for them, for the workers in this factory. And then obviously, and it was built in 1899, so it would have been a shop probably up to about the 1960s. I'd have thought. And then it was converted into 2 houses, then into 1 house, and eventually in November 1984 we moved in. Now on that very first night, my mum was terrified of the house. She had a really, really uneasy feeling. She should have been excited. She knew she'd have been excited because it was a new property, but she had this overwhelming sense of dread and fear. What would have been sorry, you had your hand up. Go on. Right. Oh, he's waving. Okay, it's all right. Yeah, like for instance, my former bedroom, and I know it's a cold time of year, but the heating would have been on. My mum can't deal with cold, and the heating on, south facing, and every other room was warm, except for my bedroom. What you link into that, I don't know. But anyway, except for my room was so cold that you could see your breath when you breathed out. It was bitterly cold in that room for no other reason, no reason at all, because I was on the same, just across from my room was my parents' room, exactly the same kind of deal in terms of the structure of the house. There'd have been no difference, but actually their room was warm and mine was freezing cold. Always also smelled of potatoes, like earthy kind of smell.
Yeah, usually negative images.
Yeah. So that was day one, and on also day one, my mum was so kind of had this feeling about the house that she couldn't stand the thought of us being in our own bedroom, so she made us all sleep in the one room. That was on the very, very first night. And for the 6 weeks, we had the sound of glass smashing, but there was no glass to be found. We had my toys and my brother's toys would be packed away in a toy chest. And my mum would either leave the room or we'd leave the house, lock the door, come back, and the toys would be all over the house again. She knew she'd have packed them away. She knew she packed them away. They weren't left out, but this would happen on a regular basis, that these toys would appear in different areas of the house. Also, we had one wall that separated our hallway from our kitchen, and that there was one wall by the side of the door that led into the kitchen, which on a daily basis would be banged like hard from the hallway, trying to get their attention. And my mum was. This was being the 80s. So mum had these decorative plates on the wall, as a lot of people did in the 80s, had these decorative plates. And she was worried they'd all get smashed because it was such a force that this thing was banging on this wall. that she was basically panicking and thought that these plates are going to smash, and she was basically getting annoyed. So even though she was terrified, she would swear at it and tell it to stop, using colourful language, because she's from Edmonton in North London. So basically she didn't take any shit, essentially. And it would just stop. And I growing up, I heard that story only. I thought that only happened the once, but my mum actually rectified that and said, no, that happened pretty much on a daily basis. And then, so we had these things. And the TV changing channels on its own, turning itself off, turning itself back on again, just really kind of glitchy. And that could have been the 80s technology. Thinking back, it could have been, but it was just all in the same period of time. Now, I can remember my dad just finding the whole thing really quite amusing. I can remember my dad's. I was coming down for breakfast in the morning. I can remember my dad was saying, "TV was changing channels on its own again last night," and just found it really funny. Whereas my mum just a completely different viewpoint. It was the coldness in my room. It was this earthy smell. There's the feeling of this kind of negativity about the house, the toys moving around, the sound of glass smashing, this wall being banged until she told it to stop. And that carried on for, like I say, for about 6 weeks. After 6 weeks in December, the former owner of the house was in the area. She came back. She was kind of interested in what my mum and dad had been doing in terms of decorating, and my dad was knocking down walls and trying to make it a proper family home for us, certain things like that. And to be honest, my mum and dad didn't talk about any of this kind of stuff to her. Didn't even think about mentioning it. But she had a look around and my mum and dad were actually a bit embarrassed because we were redecorating. So we thought, oh God, we're changing with all these rooms we're redecorating as if we didn't like it how she had it before. So that I was a little bit embarrassed. Anyway, after a little while, they had a cup of tea and things like that. But before she left, she turned around to my mum, and this is where it gets really interesting. She turned around to my mum and said, "You've been having some really strange things happen here, aren't you? Or haven't you?" And my mum was like, kind of taken aback a bit, and was just like, "What? What?" She goes, No, you've been having some strange things happen here." And my mum was like, "Yeah, we have actually." She goes, "All right." She says, "It's Martin, but he's coming with me now, so you won't have any more problems." And Martin was her husband, and he was the reason that she left the property because he died in a motorcycle accident in the next village along. She couldn't handle the memories of being in that home, so she decided to put it up for sale, and she moved to Oxford. So it just so happened that 6 weeks later, she was seeing friends in the local area. She thought she'd pop by, and so we kind of had this link there then that this poltergeist must have been her husband. Now, I cannot remember his name. I'll have to ask my mum. But from that moment on, from talking about the poltergeist, we named him as Mr. Mason. And Mr. Mason was obviously her husband. And after she told us that, on that day, nothing else happened. Everything just stopped.
Wow.
So that's the answer to your question, Lisa. Yes, spirits can follow you around.
Yeah. And I just find that, even now, I find that fascinating. Was it that the spirit of this man who'd been killed in the next village along finally managed to make his way home to find that his wife had left, was no longer there, and there's this strange new family, and essentially the poltergeist was just trying to get our attention because out of frustration, out of a need to see his wife. And so when his wife turned up, gone, and that was it. He got what he wanted, and it was just all resolved. So that was my very, very first experience of the paranormal. And yeah, I do remember some parts of it, but like I say, a lot of it was kind of kept from me, really. It's only in later years I've been able to kind of quiz my mum a bit more about what the hell was going on in those 6 weeks. But that's essentially it. But nothing else. There was no kind of there was no physical form. She didn't see any presence or anything like that. There was nothing destructive. There was nothing being thrown around or anything like that. No signs of water on the floor or just the sound of things smashing. But yeah, so that's what started it all off for me. Growing up around that as a kid. And then obviously being a kid, I used that to my own advantage with babysitters so I could terrify them, which was always amusing.
Yeah, I think we've all done that bit.
I made out that Mr. Mason was still around. Anyway, as I got older, I read all about the Enfield poltergeist. I think I was probably about 13 when I read about the Enfield poltergeist, and that was it. I was properly hooked. And I can remember reading the book at 13 thinking, Christ, I can imagine I would just love to be, like when I was reading about the one of the rooms and things had been thrown around, there was a Lego piece and things like that. And I can remember thinking about it going, wow, I would just love to experience that. I'd just love to be in amongst that. I'm terrified of it. I just would want to experience that for myself. Yes, so it just started from there. I joined the SPR probably from as a teenager, and then as I got older, you when you're meant to grow out of these things, I never did.
Yeah, I think as well. Going back to what you were saying about the feeling of a place and the smell of it and the coldness of it.
Yeah.
I think we've all experienced that. Well, certainly I have. And it seems to be a theme. It seems to be something that it's tangible.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've done East Drive. I know Ian has, and I know.
Oh yeah.
I did East Drive with Justin, to be honest.
So there you go. There you go. That place it's very much an on or an off place. If it's kicking off, it is kicking off. If it's not, it's not. It's a pleasant place to be.
Well, East Drive. Where do I start with East Drive? East Drive was the place that turned me from a skeptic into a believer.
There you go.
Now I know, and anybody watching this knows, it has been investigated, overdone by ghost hunters every single week, every weekend. It's a money-making business, and it earns the owner a shitload of money. And I get the skepticism because for a very, very long time, we were absolutely skeptical. We thought it was a scam. We thought there was nothing there because everything we'd read, from the original case in the 1960s, everything we read was, well, that was a poltergeist case in the 1960s linked to a family, not to the property or the land. So therefore, this poltergeist cannot or should not still be around 50, 60 years later. It's kind of like, for me, it was just like, come on, it doesn't exist. There's nothing here. And I can remember when I first started off, I was working for a ghost event company with Phil Wyman. If you know Phil Wyman, and so for a time there was quite a few occasions when we would be going to East Drive nearly every for about a week, every night for about a week or so, and I went a couple of times, and again I just wasn't really getting it. I wasn't really feeling it. A few little bits and pieces, and then I went back with Dale, and again we didn't really get much. And so we'd do these big old live streams. We would be there. I think the longest time we spent there was for a full week, and that was the longest time we spent in one time. But I've probably spent hundreds of hours in East Drive, and more than anything else, then nothing happens. And for a vast majority of the time, you go in there, you sit in there, you're quite comfortable. You're sitting in the living room. What is it about this place? Couldn't get it. So, and anything we did get was just like, well, it might be this, or it might be the house settling, or it might be somebody from outside on a scooter. That we didn't honestly had no real feelings about the place, other than we thought, Christ, this place is earning somebody a lot of money, and that was it. And then, but it kept on drawing us back. Basically, we kept on going back, and in the end, what happened was that one particular time, we decided we stayed for 2 days, and the first night, we'd asked. I'm trying to think of. Is it Diane Murdy from the Ghost Club and John Fraser from the SPR to join us, and they both joined us. Because I wanted John Fraser there because obviously he is, very renowned for his knowledge and understanding of poltergeist cases. And he decided to obviously do some research whilst he was there. And so he joined us after he'd spoken to the locals at the Working Men's Club and been down to the library to investigate it and all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, came with us. And the first night, we were kind of hopeful that something might happen with those two people there. Nothing happened, which was not surprising because that's what we expected. But then the second night, because Paranormal Truth, my group was, our YouTube channel called Paranormal Truth was quite popular. We had quite a few thousand subscribers. So our kind of some of those people, we brought over a few guests with us. And people in the chat and people who had been kind of subscribers to the channel and things like that. And for the second night, and on what happened was some of the females, there's about four or five females were there amongst the guests, and they decided that they would try and get something happening in Philip's bedroom upstairs. They thought they would kind of hold hands, sit in a circle, try a seance, try and get something to happen. And the men would basically go downstairs in the kitchen and just no part of it, because they thought, well, maybe the female energy would get something to happen. So they started a seance, and they started to feel that something was circling around them. And one of the people had felt as if a hand was being gripped on her arm. That's Diane Chambers, if you remember. Diane Chambers.
Yeah.
And she felt she could almost see the white fingers on her arm, almost gripping her. But the women didn't give it any attention and decided, actually, I'm not going to play your game. We're going to go downstairs. We're going to not give you any attention whatsoever. So all the women came downstairs, and it was all in the kitchen. Every single person was accounted for in the kitchen. And then all of a sudden, from above our heads in the bedroom, Philip's bedroom again, for those that know 30 East Drive, we heard this knocking. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, what is going on? And so there's this knocking. But right, I forgot to leave a voice recorder in the bedroom. So I ran upstairs, put a voice recorder in the middle of the room, didn't do anything, didn't stay in there, just came straight back down into the kitchen. And I thought, come on, keep knocking. I want to get it. I want to capture it. And then lo and behold, it carried on knocking, and it was on wooden furniture. You could even almost work out where it's from. And it sounded to me like there was a wooden TV cabinet in Philip's bedroom. It's coming from that. And the knocking seemed to become more insistent and louder and angrier, for want of a better word. Even though you can't really give emotion to a knock, but that's what it sounded like. It was more, and I counted about a dozen from this empty bedroom. It wasn't next door from Carol's, the adjoining property. It wasn't outside. It was directly above our heads. We can all pinpoint where it's coming from. And I just thought, oh, we got it. This is it. This isn't some kind of creaky floorboard here. This is a definite poltergeist rapping that is happening above our heads. And I was just like, and after it kind of it stopped a bit, and I thought, I need to see whether it's been caught on my voice recorder. So I ran back up to the room, got the voice recorder, ran back down into the kitchen. I was listening to it on headphones. These kind of dozen or so knocks that started off kind of like that kind of, it was just building and building. And I thought, no. And everyone downstairs in the kitchen was just like excited, because then I was just passing the headphones around everybody going, well, just listen to this. Listen to what we've got. We've got it. This is genuine. This is absolutely everyone's accounted for. Empty bedroom, crystal clear. And but we still didn't go into that room, and we ignored it. We carried on ignoring it. And all of a sudden, directly above our heads, were the loudest. It wasn't footsteps, loudest stamping across the floor, so loud that we looked up at the ceiling and was able to track the direction of these stamping footsteps above our heads. And it went from the door of Philip's room across our heads to the corner and stopped directly above where the kitchen diner area is in the kitchen. And it had so much force, the light in the kitchen was swaying afterwards from the force of this these stamping footsteps. And I'm looking at Dale. Dale's looking at me. We're looking at the guest. And we're like, we were like school kids, to be honest. We weren't scared. We were just like school kids. We were grinning at each other. We were kind of swearing. We was just like, and you look around and you just check that everybody is there. It can't be that wasn't faked, and it wasn't some kind of natural phenomena. That was something really, really making itself known to us. And at that point, I just thought, no, that's it. East Drive is haunted, without a shadow of a doubt. East Drive is haunted. And afterwards, we the following, I can't remember how long after that. I think the following year we went back. We went back with Kieran O'Keefe, and we went back with Ian and things like that. And we just wanted to kind of peek, because we kind of knew we would never be able to get that experience again, because it was phenomenal. But we had so many more questions afterwards. We knew it was real, so we kept on going back.
It's one of them places.
Yeah, exactly. Go on.
Did you pick up the? I've asked Ian this one as well. Did you pick the portal up?
Well, no, but some of the things which we did get. I mean, there's quite a lot of things. I mean, that was for us the most interesting, because actually at the time of those footsteps, just we was doing a live stream. We had a camera on the landing, so we knew that nobody went past it to go into Philip's bedroom. The really weird thing was that the camera with a very, very sensitive microphone did not pick up those loud, booming, heavy, stomping footsteps that was in the room next to it, but was able to pick up our reactions in the kitchen louder downstairs than the footsteps in the room right by the side of the microphone. Really weird. Now,
it's a good place.
Able to kind of manipulate the audio. I don't know how, but it was just amazing. Anyway, the following time we had a few other things. We had the sound of, we would do locked off cameras. We'd go out for a bit, have a bit of a break, and we would have the sound of Latin. I think Ian, I think you was able to kind of decipher the Latin.
The words "matus gratius," which means gracious words.
Yeah,
and he was reacting to you having a conversation downstairs.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense as well, because I've done a little bit of research on it, and there was an abbey very, very close to that property. Yes, it's an housing estate now, but it wasn't always.
No,
there was an abbey there and a stream.
Well, I know that John Fraser tried to looked into the land use of where 30 East Drive is when going back. And I think it was just essentially like an orchard. There was nothing really of great note that was there, in terms of so obviously the question was, well, if this whole story of a monk, we never really got that. We never really got where this monk idea came from. But what we can only go on what we experienced. We obviously experienced what I would regard as the heavy footsteps was obvious for me, and and again, it's difficult because you're putting images in your head, but it sounded like a male, and obviously with that kind of aggression, it didn't sound like a female stomping across the floor. But we'd also heard children as well. At one point, we had a child laughing in the hallway as Ian was there with two police officers there. Was it 2-3 in the morning?
That was
and we were telling a joke about Chucky. And
it was their reaction that was funniest.
Yeah, because essentially what we had Steve from the Ouija Brothers had a Chucky doll, which you may have seen around because he brings it out every so often. And we, to try and get a reaction, decided it'd be funny to strap a knife to its hand and put it on a locked off camera upstairs. Now, the police turned up because they were just interested at 2 a.m. and they were interested because the lights were on and they'd heard about this house and wanted to have a little look around and have a chat about what was going on. We was a little bit nervous because Chucky was upstairs with a knife in his hand. Anyway, but they were going around. They're really nice, easygoing guys, and we were laughing about Chucky. And one of the coppers, the reason why we're laughing is because one of the coppers said, "It's funny, because every Halloween, my son's ginger, and we'll dress him up as Chucky because he's his ginger hair." So we laughed, and then a child laughed in the hallway just afterwards in reaction to the joke. And then the police were like, "Did you hear that?" And we're like, "Yeah." It's just like, does that normally happen? We're like, "Actually, yeah, it does." And they didn't stay too long after that, did they, Ian?
No, not for long. I think it's because the younger one said he was a skeptic about 5 minutes before, wasn't
he? Yeah.
I get that with that loads and loads. But yeah, the whole area was riddled with abbeys and different sects of monks as well. And the whole of Pontefract is riddled with underground tunnels. So again,
so it's Nottingham then, essentially.
Sorry, what?
Is it similar to Nottingham? Because Nottingham has a lot of caves and tunnels and things like that.
Well, yeah, and they're connected. Believe it or not, if you look at the, you can call it history or legend or myth, whatever you want to call it. But Robin Hood travelled the whole length of Sherwood Forest, which back then went all the way to Pontefract because he travelled through Sherwood Forest from Nottingham to Pontefract to see Maid Marian, who was in an abbey in Pontefract. There's a lot of the members of Robin Hood's merry men.
There is obviously a lot of history of Pontefract, the Battle of Chesterfield and things like that. And but you hear this. I mean, we heard all the stories about the monks, and Benedictine monks or Cistercian monks, and what abbey they may have, where this monk may have come from. We heard the stories about, it's that the monk had. Well, it wasn't the monk; it was his brother, or the monk was killed children and put them down the well that was meant to be beneath the living room. All of the stories we'd kind of heard, but to be honest, we were kind of skeptical of all of them because essentially what we were doing is going in and just, you have to go on what you see and hear and experience.
Yeah.
And what we heard what we experienced was seemingly a male spirit. I mean, we at one point when we were there for a week, after a week it gets to you, that place, because we were doing live streams from 8 p.m. till 5 a.m. every day for 5 days.
And then we get into bed and the birds start tweeting, wouldn't they? Remember?
Yeah. and it was kind of a very tiring. It kind of exhausts you mentally because you're on edge. I mean, at some points you're kind of absolutely fine, and other times you're just a little bit kind of, your hackles are up. It's that fight or flight thing. You're thinking something's here. And when we got things happening, it was kind of a cumulative effect where in the end, at the start, Dale would be like, "Oh, I've got something. I've got to go back to Manchester and pick something up." I was like, "All right, mate, no problem." He says, I'll be a couple of hours. You're all right on your own here, aren't you? I'm like, "Yeah, fine, not a problem." Didn't bother me in the slightest being on my own in that place.
Yeah.
But after 4 or 5 days, And you've had things happening, and we always used to get the most things when you were about to leave the property, about to walk out of a room, when your guard was down.
Yeah.
And on one occasion, we were doing this live stream again, 8 hours long, and a lot of that in the live stream is us trying different things and calling out and doing all the stuff that most kind of ghost hunters would do. But what we didn't and no one ever have used gadgets of any sort. So we didn't use REM pods, we didn't use K2 meters, we didn't use Ovilus devices or anything else, nothing like that. It was just audio recorders and cameras. And we just want something to happen. So we spent 8 hours asking for something to happen. Not a thing. Not a thing. And then we do the live stream on YouTube, and it gets to 5 a.m. You're slightly delirious, and you start talking absolute nonsense because you're just overtired. And we were like, right, it's 5 a.m. Right, guys, thanks so much. We're absolutely shattered. We're going to bed now. Thank you for joining us. Right, see us again tomorrow. Later on tonight, we'll do it all over again, kind of thing. We turn the cameras off, turn the live stream off, and we were so exhausted. It was the kind of territory where as soon as you hit your head, your head hits the pillow when you get into one of the bedrooms, get in your sleeping bag, and you think, right, 5-10 minutes, that's it, I'm out. I'm sleeping till midday then. And we would do that, and we'd turn the cameras off, get into the sleeping bag, settle down, close the door, and I know that within 5 minutes I can sleep because I can sleep dead quickly. And at that point, you can hear marbles being thrown on the landing outside your bedroom. Right? And I'm like, you fucking bastard. Absolute bastard. We've been asking for something for 8 hours. Nothing. Not a dicky bird. Nothing. And as soon as I go to bed, and as soon as we turn the cameras off, stuff gets thrown around right outside my bedroom. And you do start to... I think Colin Wilson wrote a book very much, and obviously talked a lot in that book about, called Poltergeist, talked a lot about East Drive and the Pontefract, Black Muck and Pontefract. And in that, he describes obviously a poltergeist as how did he describe it? It was basically essentially a naughty child, a naughty, unruly child. And it was just it liked playing up. And I thought, yeah, spot on. That's absolutely what we got from that place. Something is playing with us big time. And we thought, well, it's obviously been listening. It's obviously been waiting. You say it, but it has obviously been listening and waiting for that moment when we finally get to bed. And then it will show what it can do. Yeah. And it's frustrating.
I think, was it one night you and Dale went up to bed, and I was sleeping on the sofa, and I had someone come down the stairs, and I said to you in the morning, was that either you come down? And they were, no, we were out cold. But then we had most of the activity that was surprising was during the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sometimes wouldn't be much.
The keys in the door.
Yeah, keys in the door rattling and things like that. We had a knock. I mean, what the best one, right? On one of the occasions was there with Kieran O'Keefe, right? This was, and the Ouija brothers were there, and a few other people were there as well. But at one point, there was Griff from the Ouija brothers was talking to camera, and Kieran is watching the monitor, kind of like what I'm doing on a laptop now. And Steve was near the kitchen door, and I was facing Steve, and he was facing me. And all of a sudden, we had a knock on the door, like as clear as anything, like a polite knock. And it was so normal, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was maybe Griff or one of the others knocking just to make sure it was okay to come in, right? So, but then Griff, we just saw on the camera that actually Griff was sat down in the living room, and then Griff was like, "Did you hear that?" I was like, "Yeah, isn't that you?" And it was like, "No, mate, I'm sat here." All right, and we opened the door, and obviously there's nobody behind it. But Kieran O'Keefe was right there, and I was like, "Come on, Kieran, come on." You have to admit that That is paranormal, Kieran. It's happened right in front of you, and there is nobody behind that door.
Yeah.
Kieran O'Keefe, absolutely. Would he admit that there was something paranormal? Of course he wouldn't. He says, well, what we can say, he says, is that there was a sound that is unexplained that came from the vicinity of that door. And I was like, fuck.
The best I've ever got out of Kieran was, now I'm intrigued.
Yes. Yeah. He is so programmed.
Yeah.
not believing anything, even when it's happened right in front of him. That's I suppose that's his job, obviously, and he's very, very good at very, very good at doing it. But yeah, bless him. He would not admit to anything, and because he wouldn't even use the word knock because that gives it human connotations. So it's just a sound.
Noise.
Yeah, a noise. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I find that very fascinating. But my findings from it is that there's a definite portal outside at fire. A lot of activity that happens is caused by what they call a mimic. But there is a definite haunting as well. There is a definite haunting there as well. But the Black Monk is actually not connected whatsoever with. He's being connected by people just trying to find things and invent something. But
people are going to make that connection. The Black Monk famously has an abbey.
Yeah, the Black Monk actually came from. It is part of diocese, Montbreton Priory.
Yeah.
Which is nowhere near really, but that's where Black Monks, the naughty buggers, came from. They used to hijack boats.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things which kind of you do these things. I'll just mention one other occurrence because it just caught me off guard completely, and for most people it freaked them out because it kind of. Well, what happened was obviously we've been doing these live streams, and every so often people want to go out for a bit of fresh air. They just want to stand outside, have a vape, or have a chat outside, and just relax. I can't remember if you were there, Ian, but anyway.
Yeah, I was outside with Griff, Dale, and Steve.
And we stood there outside having a break when literally 3 foot away, outside, children giggling.
Yeah.
Right. And it was I could 3 foot away from me, a child giggling, like praying, but it was late, and we're like, well, no, shut up. That's bollocks. That's somebody from next door. That must be Janet's grandkids, or sorry, Carol's grandkids must be in the garden, even though it's late and it's nighttime. It must be them. You look over the fence, not a soul. There are no children playing around 3 foot away. There are no kids on the other side of the fence playing. And you think, so you have all these voice recorders set up in the house. You don't think to put a voice recorder outside when you're having when they were having a kind of break outside.
No.
So that's where the noise comes from in the end. It's like, right after that, whether I'm outside the house or inside the house, good advice for anybody going, take a voice recorder, because you do not know when that was outside on the front lawn. You do not know when it's going to happen.
Another thing that happens quite a lot is people tapping on a car window and there's nobody there.
Oh, really? I've not heard that.
Yeah.
Although we did have an instant flip-flops, didn't we, Justin?
Thanks for raising that, Ian. Yeah. I suppose I've got to tell the flip-flop story now, haven't I? Right, yeah. So not that I'm jumpy or anything, but I had to do like a lone vigil. Everyone left the house to make it kind of as quiet as possible. Everyone left the house, and I sat in Philip's bedroom, and that's where Dale was sleeping in his room, and obviously he had his stuff and his clothes, and he had his bits and pieces on a chair in the living room. In the bedroom, and I was sat on the bed calling out, absolutely quiet, and then basically I just hear a noise right by me, right next to me. So I'm reacting, you know, I've got this, I'm trying to get my torch on. I'm like, what the how's that? And it was one of Dale's flip-flops that he'd had on his chair. And they just happened to fall off the chair. Now, I know I didn't touch the chair, but I think it's more likely they just fell off with the pure force of gravity, nothing kind of paranormal going on. But it makes your heart beat faster, let's put it that way. So yeah, so after that, Dale constantly kind of ribbed me about that and how jumpy I was at these flip-flops of his.
Well, I think we all woke up the whole of Pontefract outside laughing our heads off.
Yeah. Oh dear. But yeah, so so East Drive, I know it's got its haters, I know it's got its critics, and I get it. I absolutely do get it, because for a long time we were its strongest critic, to be honest. We didn't believe any of it. And then all of that happened, and we had to change our mind, essentially. And that we'd been to the ancient Ram Inn, we'd been to other places around the country, but that was the one place where something happened that was undeniable. And so we just ended up coming back there quite a lot. Because when something does actually happen, which is genuine, you kind of tend to home in on it. Sorry, Brian, say.
Have you done Pontefract Castle?
No, we never did Pontefract Castle, actually. No, we didn't go there.
It's got quite a bit going off there, actually. The majority is still intact underground. There's not a great deal left above, but they do haunted evenings there as well, or they did.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check it out, because it's nice to just, because it's not that far from where I live, so it'd have to be somewhere that I'd like to kind of check out.
Yeah, there's quite a few places, but yeah, it's not a bad one, actually.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, so to try and cut a long story short, we had all these experiences, and sadly, kind of Paranormal Truth, the channel that I was with, kind of over, I think it was just after lockdown and things like that. We had certain issues and things like that, and also I was starting to work. I'd signed an NDA, basically working towards the formation of another paranormal society called the UK Paranormal Society, which was very much involved with ethics and trying to make sure that and really just to educate people on the correct ways of investigating, the correct ways of looking after a location, a heritage location, not faking things, not breaking and entering, not trespassing, and it was that kind of, because that's what we'd seen. We'd seen a lot of that online, a lot of that on YouTube, and so we thought, yeah, actually, that it's a good, worthwhile kind of cause, and this society to get involved with, because it was brand new. But I couldn't tell Dale any of this, and so when he was like, oh man, we've got to go to such and such location, which was abandoned, which was just like essentially trespassing. And I'm like, mate, can't do it. So so that didn't go down too well. So there was that, and there was other issues and things. But yeah, Paranormal Truth became no more. So I decided to really kind of duck out of the paranormal for a while. Really, I was quite happy to watch other people go out and investigate, and other channels grow and things like that, But I kind of always missed it. And when we did these weekly podcasts, I really missed talking to people, genuine witnesses. We talked and chatted to some amazing people, and some from big cases. I think one of my favorites was a guy called Keith Linder, who had the Bothell House in Washington, America. Absolutely comes across absolutely genuinely, had some incredible poltergeist activity. He was vilified, to be honest, and by Ghost Adventures. But for a follow-up investigation by a guy called Steve Meara from the UK went over to America, and Don Phillips. Yeah. And they really did record a huge amount of evidence, and came out with this huge report, basically confirming that it was genuine. What he was experiencing was genuine, because and so you speak to people like that, and we also spoke to Andrea Perrin, who was one of the original Perrin family members from the Conjuring House. Yeah. which if you've ever seen the film, is based on her family. And again, she was gorgeous. She was just so lovely and so kind and so wonderful, and just had this really interesting factual account of what happened to her away from the film side of it. So I kind of missed that, really. I loved all the eyewitness accounts. I loved all of that. So having ducked out of the paranormal for a while, I thought, you know what, I actually fancy starting up my own podcasts again. And that's what I've done. So I'm not even started it yet. So it's starting on Monday, this coming Monday, because Supernatural's on every Monday. So I kind of like the continuity of that. And plus, most of the time, people are doing things on a Friday night or a Saturday night and they're investigating, but not many people are doing much on a Monday night. So I thought I'll do it on a Monday.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting up from scratch. I have no real YouTube channel. I don't really have like a huge number of followers or anything like that. So if anybody's watching and you fancy liking, because I ain't started yet. So if you fancy kind of listening to more of this kind of stuff and witnesses and eyewitness accounts and things from academics as well as skeptics and believers, all of that, that's what I'm after. So I'm starting up this podcast called the Paranormal Monkey Podcast, because sometimes I called myself Paranormal Monkey because I like the term, and other times I've been called Paranormal Monk. So on a few people they say, "Oh, it's Paranormal Monk," but yeah. So but originally I was Paranormal Monkey, and so anyway, I called it Paranormal Monkey Podcast. Please, by all means, if you kind of like the sound of it, then yeah, like, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, starting on Monday, and I'll just introduction to the podcast on Monday, and just starting it all off and kicking things off really about myself and where we're going with it. And then the following week, on the 6th of November, I booked my first guest. And I was like, I'll never get these people. I'll never, ever in the month of Sundays get these people, because I don't know if you know, but there's two YouTubers called Sam and Colby. And Sam and Colby have 10 million followers, subscribers. They're huge. They released a video and within a day, they had over 1 million views. I mean, these guys are they're two 20-year-old kids, basically, but they are huge in America. Absolutely massive. Anyway, they went to the Conjuring House, right? And so they went to the Conjuring House, and if you have a look on YouTube, see what you think, because I think it's amazing. They got this spirit communication using two of the caretakers who work for the house, which what they seem to be doing is, it looks, and I do use these words very carefully, it looks like genuine spirit communication. Obviously, that's become quite a viral thing. It's becoming a massive thing. And I thought, you know what? I'd love to speak to the people who own that property, that farmhouse, who own it now. Not the parent family from a long time ago, but what's going on in that house right now. Because on the face of it, it looked bloody incredible. Anyway, I sent them a message, and they was like, and I thought, I'll never get, this whole Sam Colby thing, they're so massive, and they're going to get so much kind of traffic regarding this property. And they sent the message, and they went, next Wednesday, next Monday, all right? Like, yeah.
Are they not paranormal investigators anyway? I think
well, they are very, very they seem to be very, very spiritual people who actually own that farmhouse anyway. And certainly the caretakers who have this spirit communication are very much linked in with the idea of spirit. So they're not just your kind of standoffish owners. So it's very interesting. And at the end of the day, I just would like to know that, forget the movie stuff, forget the Conjuring movie, as great as it was, and I did like the Conjuring movie, but I want to know what's actually happening in that property as of now, and why they think that is, and what is going on, and if there are different types of spirits, what types of spirits. I think because there's meant to be kind of inquisitive spirits there, but also a bit malevolence there as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. And yeah, it's quite a big way. I kind of set myself a bit high, to be honest, because it's just after that, I don't know if I can get anybody bigger than, unless I get bloody Zach Bagans or something like that in there.
Oh, do you want to go there?
But yeah, so that's coming up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's it's going to be hard work, doing it every single week, but I'm sure I'll get a lot out of it. And like I say, it's when it's early stages, I think, oh God, I've hardly got anybody subscribing and stuff. But it's all part and parcel of it, and it's all good fun. And it's, if I'm quite relaxed and things about the podcast and chatting to people, then hopefully people will get drawn in and kind of find it enjoyable as well.
It's a popular field.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just want to essentially, yes, I've done years of this kind of business, but I at no point am I ever going to say, well, I know what I'm talking about. Because you can't. And anybody who does say they know what they're talking about, who thinks they're coming out as an expert, absolute.
That's usually ending their career.
Yeah, it's just nonsense. So what I'm more interested about are the other people. What they've experienced, what they think, what do they think is going on with the paranormal. I mean, yes, I have my own. Now I've experienced it in a couple of different ways. I've got my thoughts. But it's really about listening to the guests and listening to kind of their experiences. But also, like I said, skeptics as well. I'll try and get Kieran on and people like that. But yeah, I'm also more interested in the lesser known people, not the people on telly.
These are the ones doing grassroots stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's. I mean, the paranormal community in the UK has kind of suffered with a lot of nonsense over the years, and there's been a lot of rubbish. Thank you, Cliff, by the way. Thank you. There's a lot of there's so much fakery and there's so much ego in this paranormal world that I just want a bit of a reality check, really, and go back to everyday kind of people and experiences and just have that fascination and just talking about all about these things, because now I know that these things can happen and have happened. It does change your mindset,
Yeah. I mean, I'm like Ian. I've been doing it for years and years and years, and I just haven't changed. I've not had no ambitions to be, on TV and one thing or another. I've rubbed shoulders. I've spoke to quite a few so-called celebrities. It just doesn't faze me. It's not something that I personally want to do. I'll stick to grassroots.
Yeah.
And sorry, Justin, but I do abandoned buildings.
Oh, no.
Just don't tell him.
Well, the thing is, to be honest, I mean, I'd said this years ago, right? Before I was involved with society, we were looking at all the YouTubers, and a whole load of them do go to abandoned buildings, right? But I said, to be honest, it's not a surprise when you see so many locations apparently haunted location, charging an absolute fortune for a team to go in, from let's say 8 or 9 o'clock at night till 1 a.m. Yeah, and they're charging 400-500 quid, or if it's a National Trust property, they're charging 1,500 quid, right?
Yeah.
The average Joe in this world is not going to pay up for that. It's ridiculous. So it's no wonder people are going to try and find it somewhere else.
I've never done a paid venue unless I've been invited. But what I will say is, while I can say, obviously, be respectful. Do not do any damage whatsoever wherever you go. Here's Cliff. Thanks, Cliff. You've got to be respectful. Simple as that. And as long as you are, and as long as you're doing, you're not taking anything away. You're leaving nothing but footprints and taking away nothing but memories. Really,
exactly.
That's the best way to go.
So, and you're absolutely right. And by and large, when you get involved in this kind of weird, funny, strange hobby of ours, you do kind of, I don't know, you go to, like I say, you go to these places, And it's just all about a personal experience at the end of the day. It's not, I mean, most people go there just to try and have a glimpse or a touch of the unknown and just feel as though they've experienced something.
Yeah.
And, but I've always said, go in with no expectations and then you won't go far wrong.
No,
Do not go in thinking that something's going to happen, because by and large, most of the time it doesn't.
I mean, we all have us favourite places, for example, and I can go to a place 10 times in quick succession, and I'll only get activity maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
So
that's if you're lucky, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I am. And activity. I will never fake anything. And I've had loads and loads of people. I've taken guests with me all over the place, and they'll say, just do this, just do that. You get drawn into the moment. And I've followed people, and I thought, why am I doing this? What? No. He's wrong.
Well, as soon as anybody starts faking anything, you lose all credibility.
Yeah.
Right, in an instant. And when something, and we always said this at the, whenever we did stuff, it was always, if we want to experience it, then we want to experience the genuine, real deal. Because if something is happening here, you don't need to fake anything. Nobody needs to fake anything. I'm just very cautious of being swayed, and I always have been very cautious of being swayed by flashy lights and gadgets. I know people love them. I know people absolutely adore flashy gadgets. Yeah, all right. But
that's just because it's Halloween, by the
way. Thank you, Sarah Louise. By the way, thank you. But yeah, so yes, I've kind of tried to steer away from gadgets because you can get false positives and you can become a little bit fixated on the gadgets and what things are going on, rather than kind of feeling a kind of location and experiencing it, and in other ways, rather than just looking at lights.
I'm a technophobe anyway, so the only thing I do use, and again, you're right, it is for video basically. I'll use Oddcat, but my main tools are recorder, just a voice recorder, and my camera, basically my phone.
Absolutely. And that's how it should. That's how it should be. And I think. I agree. Yeah, I think when we first started out, the reason we ended up ranting so much because we could see all of this influence from America.
Yeah.
And they've watched the latest American TV show, and all of a sudden you see people using all of the kit that Zach and company are using on the TV shows.
Yeah,
without any real idea about how they work and what may affect them. So we were like, just come on, just look into it, please. Just don't go into it blindly. By all means, use that equipment if you know how it works. Spot on, your prerogative. But don't just go on the basis of because you saw Zach doing it in America. And now you're thinking, oh, I'm going to bring that over to my team in the UK and spend an absolute fortune on crap that doesn't work.
Yeah, prime example's the original K2, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's set off by text on your phone. So
yeah, I've seen that more times, and that the biggest giveaway to that actually was older tech, older phones. You could hear them. Signal coming through.
The K2 is a classic tool, but nearly every ghost hunter carries around a K2 meter. I mean, I bought a K2 meter. Right, I don't use it, but I bought one.
I ain't got one. I've never had one.
It was brought out as an EMF reader, right?
Yeah.
But no electrician in their right mind would use a K2 meter to test EMF in a building because it's shit, right? So they would have a proper technical piece of equipment that reads EMF far more accurately than a K2 meter because it doesn't barely work in the first place. But ghost hunters have latched onto it because I've seen it on TV shows. They must work.
Do you know where the first one came through? And I used it years and years and years ago, just as a a gimmick, basically, because I knew exactly what were happening. If you know anything about frequencies, then you know it's not true. You know what I mean? It's coming from copper wiring and God knows what else. But I actually used a field strength meter from a CB and stuck a dummy load on it. And it actually worked. It got a reading. I'm thinking,
Of course it would.
could be fun, you know, could be fun. So this is what I did. And soon after that, it became an EMF.
Yeah.
I thought I'd make an appearance for the last couple of minutes.
Evening.
That's very good of you.
I know, evening. I've been watching the show. I've been really, really interested. And what you were saying, Justin, I was sitting here memorised by and having a good chuckle in the background. But my boys have done really well.
Yeah, I think
Justin's got most of the work.
Well, yeah. in this field, right? In this hobby, sorry, so in this kind of hobby of ours, you've got to take things lightly. Yeah. You can't get too serious about it because when you spend your time in the dark, calling out to nothing, it's not exactly sane, is it?
No, exactly not. No. We should be locked up in most of the asylums we investigate. Yeah.
I think it's 150 years ago. We probably would have been.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't look at him. He's a fucking loon. He's shouting out into the darkness. What's he doing?
One of the few people as I had as a guest a few weeks ago, he's actually still doing exactly that. Filming it. Obviously, he's filming it. My friend Brian Baker. Based in
I love Brian. I think he's brilliant.
He's doing exactly what you've just mentioned, Justin. He's still doing it. He's stood in an old Victorian building, shouting out. The only thing, again, I'm with a like mind, I've got to say, because I don't like gadgets.
Yeah.
And he does use some gadgets, and he's talking to gadgets, and for me, they're just apps.
Yeah.
So, there's no legible reason why an app would talk back to you, but they're compelling. Sometimes it's compelling, and it's coincidental.
And I think actually, if you're kind of interested in going to a ghost hunt event, for instance, I remember when I first started, a long time ago, and I just went to a regular kind of ghost hunt event. That's how most people end up, I think, really start with those kinds of things. And when I would, I would get a little bit freaked out by the gadgets going off and the K2 meters. And there was one time, I was where I live in Lincolnshire. There's a place called Gainsborough, and in Gainsborough there is an old police station that was also a magistrate's court called the Old Nick Theatre, which you may or may not have heard of, the Old Nick Theatre. And I went there. That was my very, very first investigation. I went into one of the rooms, which I think was a booking-in room for the female prisoners, and there were different K2 meters dotted around. There's probably about 5 or 6, and at one point they all went off on maximum all together. Didn't matter what part of the room they were on. They were all going on max, absolutely going nuts, and then they're doing it, and it just stopped. And as somebody who was brand new to that, it freaked me out because you just, you don't think about interference. You don't think about what could have caused that. You just think that's a ghost that's come into the room, and so it's very, very easy to kind of see proof in gadgets. I think, but as the more you do it, the more you become a little bit more kind of skeptically minded, and when you look into it a bit more, you realize how easily these things can be manipulated.
Yeah,
Justin, I've got a question for you from Sarah Louise. Justin, do you think AI will have a negative effect on hauntings?
As in artificial intelligence, AI. Do you know what? I honestly don't think so. I mean, some people might kind of think that technology and things are kind of going to have an effect of I'm still of the mind that it doesn't really matter what kind of technology or anything like that you would have. And I just think in a lot of cases, it is the land. And I don't think it's essentially affected by time or by technology.
Yeah,
I think the only thing AI can really cause a problem with is maybe evidence.
Yeah, I think that's what the question meant really is not actually what effect will AI have on the paranormal. What AI will have an effect on how people are using it.
Yeah. Well, it makes. I mean, that obviously, it goes back to similar kind of conversations around CGI. How much can you trust a video recording now? You can't.
Exactly. You can't,
because everything can be manipulated.
Yeah.
If it was a piece of video evidence, even if it was a video, 3 cameras capturing a ghost from multiple angles, I still wouldn't believe it. And I think if it was 3 cameras capturing the same thing and 10 witnesses who are able to independently verify from each other what they'd seen and were able to absolutely describe the apparition they'd seen at the same time, wearing the same clothes and things like that, then I think you're onto something. I mean, it just opens things up to fakery,
exactly.
Well, boys, I do know you've got to go for the wife, Ian.
Yeah, I have.
But I just want to thank you, Justin, for coming on. Obviously, I'm so sorry that I've not been on. It's just I'm taking a break for the whole podcasting, but I thought I'd make an appearance for the last 5 minutes just to say hi to everybody, let them know that I'm alive. My boys have done so. I'm in the basement. As you can see, they left me with shitty wallpaper.
Yeah. You put it up.
But my boys are doing me proud, and I'm so happy that the shows are going still well, and they've no crashed and burnt my shows.
Wouldn't let it crash and burn, would you, Ian?
Nah, never.
No. But join us next week, folks, and everyone have a good weekend. But definitely, please go along to YouTube and subscribe to Paramonkey podcast.
Yeah,
definitely.
Thank you, honestly, just before you go, if you could, that would be lovely. I know I haven't even started the YouTube channel yet, but if you go along, I'm hoping to get some great guests over the time, and it'll just help me out massively, enormously if you could help. But thank you.
And nice talking to you, and hopefully we'll have you back.
And you, yeah, exactly, yeah. Always welcome, always welcome. Thank you.
And hopefully soon, Justin, we'll investigate again.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, one last thing, right?
Definitely.
Did I ever tell you that Ian nearly killed me? Right? Genuinely, right? A long time ago, we made a documentary, and we went to Pluckley Village, and I had to drop Ian back off to his home in Hastings, right? And I think I dropped him off about midnight, something like that. Yeah. And I had to drive back home after I dropped him off, right? Absolutely fine, except being a silly sod, I decided not to sleep. And what I did on the motorway on the way back on the M1 on the way back home is I fell asleep at the wheel. And my eyes closed in the slow lane and they opened in the fast lane. And it was about as close as I ever got to having a properly serious incident. So I'm fully blaming Ian for that. For living too bloody far away.
I was only an hour away from Pluckley.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did he say to Dale I'd have driven there, but he said, Justin will pick you up.
Yeah, I know what he's going to, isn't he? Yeah.
But you just but everybody take care, and we will see you real soon. Well, I'll see you in the middle of November, but you just take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Everybody.